Welcome back. Hamas has significant support within Palestinian society, yet Israel and the Middle East Quartet, comprising the US, EU, the UN and Russia, refuses to deal with them. Will this hinder any potential unity government that dares to include Hamas? Well, joining us now is Israel's former ambassador to the UN, Dan Gilliman. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. The former Israeli Foreign Minister Shlomo Ben-Ami said a month ago, whether we like it or not, Hamas will not go away. Since its victory in 2006, Hamas has sustained its support in Palestinian society despite attempts to destroy it through economic blockades, political boycotts and military incursions. This approach is not working. A new strategy must be found. Isn't it clear, Mr. Gilliman, that this new strategy would mean talking to Hamas and recognizing Hamas if it is to be a part of a Palestinian unity government?
Well, the question is, what does one talk to Hamas about? What will Israel talk to them about? About how they want to kill us? About what method of murder we would prefer? Would we prefer suicide bombings or rocket firing? Would we prefer them to don explosive belts on 11-year-old kids or send women out? I mean, is that what we're going to discuss with Hamas? Hamas has for years refused to accept the very simple conditions and requirements and demands of the international community to recognize Israel, to forego terror, and to honor past agreements. If Hamas indeed accepts those three very, very realistic and very sensible conditions, then if they are part of a national unity government, and the question again is, what will that government be united about? Will it be united over terror? Will it be united over the destruction of Israel? Over the recognition of Israel and the acceptance of a two-state solution?
Let's flip this around a little bit. Won't the Palestinians be asking, what are they going to talk to the Israeli government about, looking at the extreme views within the current and future Israeli government? Benjamin Netanyahu is saying there's no such thing as a two-state solution going to happen. Avigdor Lieberman calling for ethnic cleansing of Palestinian Israelis living within Israel. Surely, if the international community can accept such extreme views within any Israeli administration, surely there must be place for a group like Hamas amongst the Palestinians.
Well, the big difference is that Hamas is a terror organization dedicated to the destruction of Israel and the killing of as many Israelis, women, children, as they can. And the Israeli government is the government of a democratic state which believes in values and in morals and in democracy. And I don't think one should pay too much attention to declarations or statements made during an election campaign. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, and I believe that once Mr. Lieberman does become foreign minister, you will find him a very pragmatic and intelligent and able person who realizes the reality that Israel is facing. He never called for ethnic cleansing. He sometimes demonized and portrayed in the foreign press
let me remind you,
an extremist.
In his election campaign, he called for Palestinian Israelis to be stripped of their citizenship if they don't declare an oath of loyalty. Let's forget about his election campaign. In 2004, he said, Palestinian Israelis have no place here. They can take their bundles and get lost. In 2006, he said Arab Knesset members who met with Hamas should be executed. So surely if you're saying that he made some extreme statements and that he'll soften his views once he's in government, surely the same can be said about Hamas on the Palestinian side. Maybe they'll become pragmatic.
Well, I hope very much that one day Hamas will become pragmatic, and maybe after the very severe blow they received in the last operation in Gaza, they realize that they should be more pragmatic. But so far, we have not heard any statements from Hamas which call for democracy, which call for the rule of law, which call for recognition of Israel. All we hear from Hamas is a total commitment to terror and to violence and to the killing of as many Israelis as they can. I think that, you know, if this national unity government does come about, it will be very short-lived. I don't see any common denominator between Mahmoud Abbas and Haniya, between Fatah and Hamas. It will only be another period in which Hamas will use the time in order to regroup and rearm, in order next time to overthrow both Fatah and try and terrorize Israel. So we've been to that, we've seen that movie before, and what we're seeing today is again just a preview, soon to be seen in a theater near you. And I don't think anybody who's seen the previous performance is very eager to see the sequel.
Ambassador Dan Gilliman, thanks for taking the time to talk to us from Milan.
Thank you very much for having me.
And our correspondent Hoda Abdel Hamid now joins us from a dusty and windy northeastern Gaza. Hoda, with all these latest developments, the UN Special Rapporteurs report the testimony of those Israeli soldiers. Do Gazans you've met feel that their cries for justice are being heard?
Well, I mean, wherever you go really around Gaza, you will hear people telling you similar stories to the ones that the soldiers testified about. There is a feeling that on one hand, this is a proof that what they have been saying all along, whether it's during the war, immediately after the war, and until today, really, because nothing has changed in their lives, so this is what they sit and talk about the whole time, has been proven. But there's also some people who are quite upset in the sense that some of them told me, when we Palestinians talk about these stories, no one believes us, and then when the Israelis talk about it, then it becomes a big story. However, there is certainly a satisfaction that maybe there will be some sort of accountability.
And Hoda, as we saw earlier in your report, Palestinians are not only dealing with the conflict with Israel, but also their own factional internal divisions. I wonder, how does that affect the atmosphere amongst Palestinians, particularly among the youth?
Well, people here are very concerned about these factional divisions. There is certainly a feeling that this, at the moment, is the biggest danger facing the Palestinian people, especially that they are split when facing the Israeli occupation. Whether people are hopeful that if their leadership reaches some sort of agreement in Cairo, things will settle down on the streets, I think no. They take it with a pinch of salt. They say that these divisions are too deeply entrenched, really, at the moment, that there have been too much suffering, that people, too much bloodletting on the street, and it will take a lot of time and a lot of personal effort from every single citizen to really be able to overcome these divisions, the suffering, the bad memories, and look forward. So there's a bit of skepticism, and people think that really they're in for the long haul before these divisions can dissipate.
Hoda Abdel Hamid, thank you very much for that. Now, the ongoing power struggle between Hamas and Fatah has polarized opinion and in some cases divided families. But one family, the Shamis, have managed to put aside their ideological differences to bear the tragedy that tore two brothers apart.
In the midst of the sea of green flags, a symbol of the Hamas government, is the house of the Shami family. But here, the flags raised are those of rival faction Fatah, and pictures of its former leader, Yasser Arafat, adorn the house.
We grew up with Fatah. Everyone used to hear about the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and they used to always say, Fatah, Fatah, and we joined. We never heard of all these factions. This is all new. The factions Fatah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, they are new. They weren't there before.
In 2006, Gaza was racked by infighting, bombings, kidnappings, and gunfights broke out as Hamas and Fatah fought for control of the Strip, claiming lives on both sides. Hamas eventually took over, and tensions have been high ever since. Even here, in the seemingly unified household, the divide between the two sides is evident. For Itaf and Adnan's son Sami works for Hamas's executive forces, now simply called the Palestinian Police.
The thing that convinced me to be part of Hamas is their adherence to religion. I got closer to the mosque and the people of the mosque. My love grew for this movement because of its people. When I first joined, I didn't tell my family. I was scared that they would object, but thank God they didn't. It took 8 months for me to break the news, and then I told my father.
I always taught my children about freedom of thought. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. If they join a faction or organization and they are convinced of it, then I would not force them to leave. This is not a dictatorship. We have freedom of thought.
This tolerance and openness was put to the test when his son, Sami's twin brother, Usama, a member of the preventative security forces loyal to Fatah, died 2 years ago, shot by members of Hamas.
When I heard the news, I fell to the ground. It was such a shock. A great shock. And he was killed by who? By Muslim believers.
For Sami, his brother's death held a bitter irony.
The shock of my brother's death was one thing. The fact that the perpetrators were members of the force I belonged to was another. That he was killed at the hands of the executive forces made me think twice. It hurt me even more.
Yet Sami's resolve to remain with Hamas has not weakened.
When I joined Hamas, it wasn't for personal reasons. I joined them knowing that I would not change my mind at the first sign of trouble.
Although this proved a sticking point between Sami and his parents, they have found a way to come to terms with it.
We lost one son already, and we don't want to lose another one.
This family's grief over their son's death is plain to see. They built a shrine to his memory. His picture stared down at them from every wall, but they decided to put the past behind them.
This family is a democracy. I think both sides of this conflict should follow the example of this small family. This family can come to an agreement.
Of course, we'd love to hear your views on the program. You can email us on focusongaza@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching.